Hi everybody, it's Nikki here and welcome to a bookish video. So today I have my October reading wrap up, which is where I talk about all the books that I read in the month of October. I won't be giving any synopsis for these books, but I will be giving you my thoughts and opinions on them, and then some statistics at the end of the video. So let's get straight into it. So first off, the first book I finished in October was Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong. This was a new purchase for me, and I actually started this at the end of September, but hadn't quite finished it for September's wrap up. So I finished it in October. This is a gorgeous Waterstones exclusive edition. It has a beautiful hardback cover. And this book is actually a continuation of the These Violent Delights that Chloe Gong also wrote. So if this book does sound interesting for you, you may want to read her duology, These Violent Delights, first. I have not, even though I got These Violent Delights in a fairy loot box many months ago, but to be honest, even though this does refer back to the storyline and the events of These Violent Delights duology, I didn't feel like I was missing anything to truly appreciate this story on its own. However, obviously this book spoils some of the events that happen in the duology, but I'm not too worried about that because with my memory, I won't even remember anyway. So when I get round to reading These Violent Delights, if I leave it long enough, I won't even remember. So my notes say that I was given a NetGalley arc of this book prior to purchasing myself. However, because this was published before I finished the NetGalley arc, I was able to go out and purchase a physical copy, and I finished reading it physically. So it will not count as an ebook read, it will count as a physical read. At first I struggled with the setting and the culture. That was mainly when I was reading it as an ebook, but once I was reading it as a physical book, for some strange reason, I don't know whether it was just reading it in this format rather than an ebook format, or whether by the point that I started to read it in the physical format, I'd got a hang of the culture and some of the words that are in there, because this is very much, is it Chinese or Japanese? But it's Asian inspired. And it got a lot easier for me to understand and take in. Great characters and intrigue. Interested in the sequel, as this will have a sequel eventually. And I do want to read These Violent Delights duology now. As I say, I do own These Violent Delights, so give it a few moments and I might pick that up. I gave this one 4 stars. The next book I read was The Animals of Farthingwood, The Adventure Begins. I thought this was the first book which I had as a child, but this is actually a prequel to The Animals of Farthingwood. That's why it's titled The Adventure Begins. It's a really floppy book, and I honestly thought I would fly through this, but because of my mental health slump at the moment, it actually took me a lot longer. So also keep that in mind when I'm giving you my thoughts and opinions. Maybe the reason why I'm struggling with some of these books is because of my mental health rather than because of the books themselves. So please do take everything with a pinch of salt this time. So my notes say, shockingly graphic in tales of animals attacking each other and dying from multiple accidents. I felt guilty for being the human, to be honest. Yes, one thing that this book does not shy away from is the dangers that animals encounter in human populated areas. It was, I was shocked because this is a children's book. I would say this lies along the same lines of Watership Down. Kind of glad that I'm reading it as an adult. I don't remember it being, like, I don't remember the actual Animals of Farthing Wood being that graphic. Or maybe just, I don't remember it being that graphic. But I don't remember being scared of the Animals of Farthing Wood. I remember loving the story. So I don't know whether, I don't know whether the original was that dark, but I gave this one 3 stars. Just be aware going in, some animals may die in not a very nice way. Next one I picked up, as I say, my reading was really struggling to get going, so I veered off a lot. I veered off from my Bookgammon TBR. After The Animals of Farthing Wood, that was on my Bookgammon TBR, but after this, pretty much nothing was on my Bookgammon TBR. So I finally picked up Lore Olympus. I thought reading a graphic novel might help to push me along in my reading. This is volume 1 by Rachel Smith. My notes on this says, trigger warnings, please check. The one thing I do like about this is that right at the beginning of the book, there is a content warning. So if any of those triggers are specific to yourself, you may want to be careful picking this one up. And I really like that the publishers did that for this. Sketchy art style, modern setting for the god story. Felt needed to know more Greek myths to fully understand and appreciate it. Yes, because I'm not massively knowledgeable about my Greek myths. I know the basics. I've watched Percy Jackson enough times. I've read the Percy Jackson series. And I do know quite a few of the like Greek god characters, but I don't know their actual stories. That's where my knowledge lacks. I feel like if I'd known more, I would have probably appreciated this more. But as just a pick up and read as is, with very little knowledge or minimum knowledge, it was enjoyable. I gave it 3 stars. I know a lot of people absolutely love this graphic novel and, you know, absolutely adore it. But I wasn't blown away by it, unfortunately. But I will be looking to purchase volumes 2 and 3, I think, which are both out now. And I know 2 is definitely out now, and 3 is either been published or is on the horizon to be published. So there is that. Next, I had my first buddy read book that I finished, and that was Vox by Christina Dalcher. I was buddy reading this with one of my subscribers called Joe. Thank you very much for buddy reading this with me, Joe, and for sticking with me on this. My notes on this says, use of religion extremists to silence women. The main character had a lot of inner thoughts and monologues. I need to turn the page. Which made the story feel longer. Trigger warning, there is animal testing in here because the main character is a scientist or works with animals, testing drugs and medications and stuff. So yes, this is very much along the lines of The Handmaid's Tale. Basically, it's using again religion and the idea that man was made first, and then women were born from men, to have men control women. And it's the idea of women shall be seen and not heard kind of mentality. And this one was really kind of scary in a way, because this doesn't just go straight in, although we are starting in the world where this numbered, like limited speech, women are allowed 100 words a day, or they receive a shock through an electric collar. Although we start off in that world, we do get through the main character's perspective memories of how the person responsible for this development slowly but surely gained the momentum to be able to pass this law, this horrible thing into the country. And I believe it is set in America, and how things can progress, and how things like the mob mentality can really fast forward some of these events as well, and how something that's quite small at first as an idea of an extremist can slowly but surely gather momentum until the vast majority of people are going, hey, you know what, this person might be onto something, and then bringing it into fruition. And it's kind of scary the way that kind of did that. I don't remember The Handmaid's Tale doing that. So I will say that this book kind of was even more frightening for me than The Handmaid's Tale, because it showed how easy this kind of thing could become a reality. Kind of scary. I did only give it 3 stars because sometimes it did feel like she did waffle on, but I should forgive her for that because I'm a waffler myself. But that's a Vox. Next, I finished my buddy read with Charlotte. We were, of course, continuing with our Throne of Glass read, which is a reread for me, but a first-time read for Charlotte. And I finished Heir of Fire, which is the 3rd book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. My notes says, love the new characters and relationships developing. The story begins to unravel bigger than the initial beginning. So yes, of course this is a reread for me, but even though I've already read all of the series, I don't quite remember what happens and who comes into which book. So in this book we have the introduction of Manon, who is one of my favourite characters, and her 13, and I'm seeing things that I didn't see before. I'm noticing little foreshadowings that I didn't notice before, and it's so much fun doing that, because it just goes to show that sometimes rereading a book that you loved the first time round can be even better the second time round, because you get to enjoy all those extra little bits that the author has put into the book that you never noticed the first time round. And I do feel like sometimes rereading a book can really, really, truly bring out the real craft of authors. It's not just about writing a story, but it's about putting in those little details that just you only notice as a reader on a reread, or if you're really, really tuned in. So yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. This was my 5-star read of the month. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Horrid by Katrina Leno on Scribd. I really, really needed something to just listen to. and it was only a 7-hour audiobook. So it says, quick audiobook, love the front cover of this book. This is one of those books that I have been interested in purchasing in the past, just never got around to. It was a great spooky season read. The narrator was a bit breathy, which was off-putting, but loved the bookish element in here with the main character buying Agatha Christie books. Yes. Yeah, sometimes when the narrator reads, like, everything's so breathy and like, oh my goodness, and it was just, the narrator was a little off-putting, but I really enjoyed the actual story of this, the main characters. It was very spooky and very atmospheric. I feel like I would have appreciated it a lot more had I been in a much better mental state. But it was just something to just listen to while my mind just couldn't concentrate on anything else. So I may have missed a couple of details. And to be honest, I can't quite actually remember what happened. I kind of do. Oh, it was about a mother and daughter returning back to the mother's house where she grew up because her grandma has passed away and left the house to her mother. So they go back to the town where her mother grew up, and the daughter discovers that something happened years before which made her mother leave pretty quick. And it's all kind of like really kind of spooky and, as I say, great atmospheric spooky season read. It was really, really good actually. But I won't be purchasing a copy because now that I know what happened, I don't feel the need to have a copy to reread again in the future. I gave Horrid 3 stars. Again, another reason why I won't be purchasing it. The next book I read was again a NetGalley ARC that unfortunately I didn't get finished before it was published, and I'd already pre-ordered the physical copy, and that is Princess of Souls by Alexander Christo. Alexander Christo is also the author of one of my favourite mermaid books, To Kill a Kingdom, and this was just as awesome. So my notes on this says, great characters, witty banter, good villains, yes, 2, enemies to lovers, found family, really enjoyed. Yes, absolutely thoroughly enjoyed this book. In fact, I remember talking to one of the ladies from my book club. We went to go see the Sleeping Beauty ballet together, and I said to her, you need to read this book because I think you would really enjoy the humour in it and the romance in it. It was just so funny, so good. I absolutely loved the relationship between our female main character and our male main character, but also the side characters in here as well were also really noteworthy. I just really thoroughly enjoyed this. So glad that I pre-ordered it. It was brilliant. I absolutely, to be honest, I read this one the fastest out of all of these books. I read this one pretty quickly, almost as quickly as I would normally read a book, whereas a lot of the others were a lot slower for me to read them. This one I absolutely flew through because I could not put this down. I really just loved picking this up and getting lost in the world of this. It is set apparently in the same world as To Kill a Kingdom, but I don't think any of the characters from the To Kill a Kingdom is in this book, but I would have to probably read the other book again to confirm that, because it has been a few years since I read To Kill a Kingdom. So yes, this one was 4 stars. The next one I read was a reread for me. I was just really in the mood for like atmospheric Halloween reads. So I read The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. As I say, I have read this before, but I never continued on in the trilogy because I hadn't purchased the other two books. But I have now, so I thought now was the perfect time to start my reread of this. So I did read this and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Enjoyed the storyline and characters, didn't remember most of it. Told you my memory's pants. This time I'm not waiting 2 years to read the sequel. Wish there was a French to English translation in the text though. Yes, this is based in New Orleans in America, and of course a lot of the characters speak French, and I had to literally sit there with my phone and a French to English translation thing open so that I could understand some of what was being said. My French is atrocious. So sometimes I kind of wish that maybe where there were French speaking in the book, that maybe as a footnote or something was the English translation. I know that's asking a lot, and that's maybe my English privilege speaking, I don't know. But I mean, it doesn't take much for me to sit there with the app, but it was pulling me out of the story. That's what I'm trying to say. It was pulling me out of the story. Whereas if there was a translation at the bottom of the page, I could just quickly glance down. You know, when I'm watching a movie or TV show, I put on the subtitles because I'm hard of hearing and I don't always catch what they're saying. So I always put on the subtitles so I can at least read what they're saying and have a bit of a understanding. So that's just, I just needed subtitles, that's all. I needed subtitles for some of the French words, but I really did enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars and I'm already picked up book 2 in the month of November, so look out for the review of that in my November reading wrap up. And last but not least, because yes, there wasn't many books I read this month, the last book I read was Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen, and my notes on this says, a mix of Holly Black's Cruel Prince and Sarah J Maas' Throne of Glass. Love the romance scenes, court politics, magic, morally grey heroine. The ending left me unsatisfied. It needs a sequel. Yes. This one did, it felt like it needed something more at the end of it. But I did love the, as I say, it was kind of a mix between Holly Black's Cruel Prince and Sarah J Maas romance sort of stories. The romance got quite steamy. Rather enjoyed that. There is something that some authors put into their romance scenes in particular that I like. And it did elicit an oh my from my lips as I was reading it. So yes, that was rather enjoyable. I literally said out loud, oh my. So the romance in here is pretty good. But it had a simplistic reading style or writing style that is very similar to Holly Black. So I really thoroughly enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. It's just missing something to get that 5 stars from me. Because if that ending had just nailed it, then this would have definitely been a 5 stars from me. But it was good. It was very, very good. So yeah. So those were all the books that I read in the month of October. So as you can see, not many, and I went completely off my Bookgammon TBR. So for the statistics, the total number of books I read was 9. That is probably my least amount of books I've read in a month this year, I believe. So not very good at all. However, the physical pages that I read was 3,256. The ebook pages that I read, I've put a question mark because, as I say, I did start reading Foul Lady Fortune and Princess of Souls as ebooks when I first started reading them. However, those two then I got as physical copies, and I finished reading them as physical copies, but I couldn't remember. I didn't make a note basically of at what point did I stop reading them as ebooks and start reading them physically. So I've counted all of their pages as physical because I now have the physical copy of the book, but I know that technically the number of physical pages I read is less than the 3,256 that I noted, and the ebook pages I read was, I'd probably say about 200 pages between the two books. I don't think I got very far through either of them before I got the physical copies in, so we're leaving that as a question mark at the moment. The audio hours of books that I own, I didn't listen to any of these books that I owned audibly, so that's 0. And then the audio hours of books that I borrowed was just that one audiobook, Horrid, which was a total of 7 hours and 14 minutes. Ratings of the books, I had 1 5-star, which was my reread of Heir of Fire. I had 4 4-stars, 4 3-stars, no 2-stars, no 1-stars, and no DNFs. The genres, I read no thrillers, no classics, and no non-fiction, but I read 1 contemporary, 1 middle grade, 1 manga and graphic novel, and 6 fantasy and sci-fi. The origin of the books I read, 8 were owned and 1 was borrowed. The format, I read 8 physically, 1 audibly, and none ebookly, because we're not counting those 2 that started off as ebooks. The bindings of the books I read, 3 were hardback and 5 were paperback. The gender of the authors, 1 was male and 8 were female. So the longest book was Heir of Fire at 562 pages. The shortest book was The Animals of Farthingwood prequel at 234 pages. I'll keep holding this as this was the oldest book that I read. This particular copy was published in 2016. However, it was originally published, I believe, in 1994. So yeah, that's the oldest book. The newest book I read was, of course, Princess of Souls, as that was published in October this year. The highest rated on Goodreads was Heir of Fire, which was currently rated at 4.46 at time of taking the at time of checking. The lowest rated was Vox at a 3.54 rating at time of checking. My least favourite book was probably The Animals of Farthingwood prequel. I think probably because, not because of the animal deaths or anything like that, but just simply because this should have been an absolute easy read. It was, as I say, it was only 234 pages. I should have been able to finish this in one day, and I just, This took me a good 4 or 5 days to finish. Now that could be because of my mental health, or it could just be because this book just didn't drive me to want to pick it up. It is a children's book, but it also has like childhood memories for me because I remember loving this as a kid. So it should have been a better read than what it actually was, I think. It's still a good book. I still gave it 3 stars, so it's not a bad book by any means. But out of all of these books, I'd probably say that this one was my least favourite. And my most favourite should be Air of Fire, as it did get the only 5 stars of the month. However, it was a reread, so I feel kind of like that's cheating. So, from all of my other reads, my most favourite book has got to be Princess of Souls by Alexander Christo. I just feel like this had the relationship that I wanted from these characters. It had that witty banter which I loved from these characters. Our female lead, she's not some damsel in distress. She's actually, as I say, a morally grey character, and at the beginning of this book, our main male character is out to kill her. And through the events of this book, he ends up changing his mind, shall we say. So I really, really did love this. Absolutely would highly recommend this for anybody who loves that enemies to lovers trope. And anybody who enjoyed To Kill a Kingdom, or any of the Into the Crooked Place, I think was her other book. Yeah, Into the Crooked Place was her duology. And it does say on the back, because it is from Hotkey Books, and they sometimes do these what's in it things at the back. It says curses, fate, romance and death. If any of those things interest you at all, I highly recommend that you pick this up. As I say, despite my mental health and it's slowing my reading down, this one I just couldn't put down. I wanted to read this and I flew through this so much. So yeah, absolutely highly recommend this one. So yeah, that is my October reading wrap up. So I hope you enjoyed it. Have you read any of these books? Are you surprised by some of my star ratings? I think a few people will be disappointed that I didn't love Lore Olympus, as many people have done that I've watched reviews on. But yeah, are there any books here that you've read and enjoyed? Any that you will be adding to your TBR list? Let me know in the comments section below the video. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!